Happy Friday.
Hello.
How's everybody doing?
Good. How about
Fantastic.
you?
I'm ready to take incoming fire. What are all the objections? I'm psyched, even though it's a rainy day here in Jersey.
Well, it's going to be 102 here, and I'd rather it not be.
It's that time of year, huh?
I'd like it to wait a little while longer, maybe June, but
So what's the hottest you've seen?
119, that's the hottest I've seen. It's 119.
That's very hot. All right. So I hope some people have some very compelling objections or things that we can address as a group today, because I'm really excited about it.
So Rob, somebody just posted a question in the chat saying, I guess the objection is, I think I'm going to wait until prices come down. I think there's going to be a crash.
I literally just had that objection.
Um, so if interest rates drop and I would refer to some little known man called Warren Buffett. Anybody ever heard of him?
Yes.
And one of his most impactful things that I've taken away is only a fool tries to time the market, right? And there's the cost of waiting. And if Warren Buffett were here, he might say, "Are you going to defer buying the sandwich because bread might come down tomorrow?" You know what I mean? Because things are expensive. I don't know anybody that stopped eating because of prices, and maybe they're hoping inflation goes down. But I think if somebody says that, I don't really, there are some people that you're not going to be able to get over that hump. But what happens if Beth prices continue to go up?
I'll be hosed. Here was the exact quote, but it was from another agent, so I couldn't influence. My buyer said he is waiting about 6 months now because he thinks the market's gonna take a big tank. That was the exact quote. So I think the best time to buy, personally, I think the best time to buy is when you need to buy and when you're able to buy. You can never time the market, and you don't know, none of us have a crystal ball. And if interest rates come down as we expect, we would expect then prices to rise, to compensate.
Right. And sometimes, and this wasn't your client, Beth, but I mean, sometimes we lose track of the fact that it's not just a financial investment. We're trying to buy, a few shares of American Airlines or whatever. This is a house that we're gonna, live and spend time in, right? And, clearly over time, home prices are gonna go up and down. And, Beth, if you lived in a home and the price has gone up 40% in 3 years, would you then sell it and try to predict that it's gonna go down for a year and then try to buy it back in a year? Or does that sound ludicrous to you?
That sounds ludicrous.
Yeah, it's been tough out there because she's a little stubborn, she's set in her ways, but then she doesn't have much success in her open houses.
Sorry about that. If you're out there talking, if you can just try to mute yourself. And Beth, you can unmute yourself. But I mean, it really does sound quite a bit ludicrous, right? I mean, you're still on mute.
Where I could improve, to be honest, is I don't think it should be my opinion necessarily. I liked where you went with Warren Buffett. I think if we can be the source of the source rather than, you know what I mean? Sometimes I think that has more credibility because of course we're going to say it's good to buy. It's a good time to buy. It's in our best interest.
But sometimes I think, Beth, we're reverse psychology ourselves out of business. And, maybe it's not the best time ever, but maybe it's just a good time to buy, right?
Yeah.
And maybe we hear a lot of people saying that they think the market's going to maybe correct or adjust, and sometimes it clouds our vision. And then we also feel awkward being self-interested, saying, "Hey, it's a good time to buy now." But honestly, I think home ownership is more than just timing, right? If you wanted to start putting money into a 401k, the stock market's at an all-time high. Does that mean you're not going to start investing now? And if you waited 5 years, how would that have treated you? Because it's been up for pretty much since like 6 months into COVID, it started going up like a rocket, right?
Mhm.
So don't feel conflicted with saying it's in my self-interest, because we are trying to help people and we're trying to give them a balanced approach as to what's going on. And if you understand how the market works, right? I might even say, hey Beth, how do you feel about inflation? Right? That individual, if it was your client, would probably say, oh yeah, inflation is really annoying, right? Because I think it's, no matter what income level you're at, it's, nobody likes to see everything going up. If you need to go get a contractor to do a repair, it might be 50% more than it was in 2000. Has anybody ever done a renovation or anything in the past year?
Mhm.
Does anybody? If you have, just tell me what you think the cost difference is from a few years ago.
It 50, I mean, we've seen the price of a pool, putting in a pool, for example, in Florida, has gone up about 50%.
Right. So Beth, if the cost of the inputs to housing continues to rise, there's a good likelihood, even if there's a small drop, which nobody knows, that long term you're going to see prices go up. Now, maybe home ownership's not for you. Maybe you know more than the experts. But I just wanted to give you a balanced approach, because people that I see, and I don't want this to come across the wrong way, is it as if they're not intelligent, but I think they're ignorant to the forces that drive real estate, if that makes any sense. So you can have somebody that's very smart that makes ignorant decisions in real estate without proper guidance, right? And
Yes.
if not you, then who? Right? Ask that question. If it's not you that has the courage and the language to educate them, then who's going to do that? The media? The media is not in the information business. They're in the advertising business, and they just want to create more eyeballs looking at something now, right? They don't really, in my opinion, I don't think any media outlets are really committed to what the truth is. They're committed to viewership, right? So, asking questions, and to me, it's ludicrous to say, I'm going to be homeless, or I'm going to defer, living my best life because I think markets might make an adjustment. There's no, I personally don't feel, even in Florida, that a year from now that there's any market that's going to be lower than it is now.
No, I don't.
There's nobody that can tell you the truth. And let me just try to rephrase this, right? Remember when it was super crazy and we were having, 10, 20, 40 offers on properties? Who remembers that frustration? Right? Now, if you were in that market and you can tell somebody, wouldn't it be great if we had some inventory and we can show you 6 houses and they didn't sell in one day? It might take 30 to 60 days for a house to sell, right? They'd be like, oh my God, that would be amazing, right? Well, guess what? Now that's here. And now they're like, I don't know. Maybe they're going to fall, right?
I know. It's, yeah.
But think about it. Like, wouldn't people in Florida have died to have like 3 properties that they could look at and not have to make a bid electronically before you got back to the office?
Right.
Right. Now it's there, and now they're getting information that's not accurate. All right. Any other objections that you have that you'd like to get some advice from your peers?
This one's tough to get over. I need to go home and pray about it so I can feel what's right to do.
I've had that. That's a good one.
Let's pray together.
Yeah.
I get
heard
that
of,
on recruiting too. A recruiting meeting, they want to go home and pray about it.
Well, if you think about if somebody says that they need to go home and pray about it, and look at, I think it's probably because they really haven't, completely made up their decision, right? And I might just say, hey Beth, I can completely appreciate your faith, but are there any items that I might be able to help you with to help you make a better decision? Right?
Yeah,
And,
good.
that
you can add to your prayers.
well, prayers without action, don't get you to your dreams, right? And I'm not here to push you one way or another, but my job is to give you the information so, you can make accurate, clear thinking, and then pray about your thought, pray that you're making the right decision. Right? Because
That's good.
I have, I was actually watching some people in the lending business. There's a little YouTube thing, The Mortgage Coach, and they said something which really resonated with me. And they said, we're not in the home sales business. We're in the home ownership business, right? Because if we can get somebody to buy into home ownership, we can find them the house. But if they haven't bought into home ownership, no house is going to work. Think about that, right? And for some of the things that, and me personally, I thought a lot of times you go to these sales events and you go to experts and people that teach you how to make more sales. I always thought there was a lot of, potential for self-serving manipulation. But I think the best salespeople are able to educate and help people identify. And that's good because if they identify that they're not the right candidate, then that's great. But let's try to accelerate that to a point where we don't waste their time or our time. Right? Because I know, sometimes we joke and say, oh, yeah, they wasted my time. They just wanted to tour around and look at homes. I don't really believe that a lot of people, get their jollies out of looking at homes they can't afford. It's probably torturous. But I think they wind up in that spot because they don't have certainty. They haven't really connected all the dots to what it means. Right? And if you're going to buy a house, Beth, to live in for the next 10 years, what does it matter if it goes down in 6 months? Right? So if the perfect house or the closest to perfect house comes on the market in 72 days from now, but you have an idea of waiting 6 months, would you regret sacrificing on the home that you were able to acquire because you were trying to time the market? Those would be questions that I would be asking, and I'd be asking them in the exact same tonality because I don't think we can sell somebody a house. Okay, I do think we can sell them on home ownership and the merits of that. And if you're talking to a buyer, and you were to ask them, Beth, do you know what the net worth of a homeowner is compared to their renting peer?
It's 40 times.
And you have them look it up on their phone, right? And, there is the wealth gap in this country is the homeownership gap, right? The wealth gap is the homeownership gap. Okay, so if we can get people, to buy for the right reasons, and they stay there for 5 to 10 years, it's not going to matter if it went down in 6 months and then it came back up. But it will matter if you don't get into the game, and there's a benefit to enjoying the home for a longer period of time as well, right? Like, it's hard to put a price tag on that.
The other thing is if you give them kind of an average increase over the last 10 years for most properties in their price range, they're going to see a substantial increase. Because if you give it to them for the last 5 years, they're going to say, well, yeah, they jumped really high in 2021. But if you go back every 10 years, you're guaranteed you're going to see an increase.
Right.
Just like the stock market, over a 10-year period, the average earned rate, I think, is 8% or something.
So I think it's in between 8 and 10. Yeah. So it's pretty consistent. So like you can't time when you get in. But here's another piece to the puzzle, which is, we've clearly in this country have underbuilt compared to the population, right? So by definition, there is a shortage of housing, right? So if there's a national shortage of housing, I think that there's definitely going to be some support for home prices to continue to go up long term, and maybe even at a more accelerated level. Because building, and this is something I'd like to put into my slides next, is, you know, the population versus the new homes we're building is not even close, right? This country's population is growing far significantly more than our construction of new homes. Okay. I think that the segment that's probably most at risk is all these rentals that were built, right? Luxury rentals, because eventually those people are going to be able to afford to buy, and they're going to drive the prices up. And, you know, I don't think the demand for those rentals are going to be, my own opinion, you know, forever.
The other one I'm hearing is about worrying about the tariffs, that it's going to push prices up, and then they won't be able to sell or something like that when they get to in the future.
People are thinking that they're gonna lose their jobs. They're trying to save their money. It's kind of a scary situation that's going on.
Yeah, Ron, if somebody was uncertain of their job or uncertain of their ability to get another job, yeah, maybe there's, you know, some concern there, but, you know, they still have to pay rent, right? And, you know, those who own homes that lose jobs, if they have access to liquidity, it gives them a little bit of a way to bridge the gap. What other, or is anybody getting questions about, you know, commission, any objections about that? I'm surprised we're not getting any of those.
So, Rob, I just wanted to point out that Glenn Baker had a comment going back to the religion question.
Right?
I don't know if he wants to talk about it, but
No, I was just making a comment that, you know, my take is when someone throws a curveball, I like pattern interrupts. And I would just probably say to them, funny, I happen to have a pocket Bible in the car. Let's do this together. Like I wouldn't leave it at that, because there's something more to what they're saying. If they're not confident, like Rob said, then you don't leave that undone. You take it as a hint that you haven't told them something. And I just recently said to the team, I said, what percentage of leads do you think are bad leads? And we agreed that 80 to 90% by the team standards are bad leads that come in. And I said, what if I told you that in the next 18 months, they're going to transact, but it's not with you? Would you be pissed? And they said, sure, I would be pretty mad. And I said, so who's the problem? You, not them. We aren't the ones educating.
And it's probably the mindset, not them particularly. It's that, you know, if you have a bad experience at a restaurant, Glenn, do you think you're gonna just maybe tell one person, or you might tell the entire team, oh my God, that restaurant was horrible, it was rude, the food was bad, right?
Yeah.
But if you have a tremendously positive experience, are you gonna go out of your way and tell everybody that this place was awesome? Probably not. I think the upset complaining mechanism is probably 5 to 10 to 1 to the, hey, I want to tell you about what a great day I had, right?
Yep.
So I think when somebody comes and says, hey, you know what, maybe I need to pray about it, right? Maybe another thing would be, hey, you know, may I ask, like, you know, what is it exactly we're praying for? Are we praying it gets accepted, or we praying that, you know, it doesn't, like, find out why, right? without being rude. You know, what are we praying for? Like, you want this house? You know, we can pray, but we can also use a good strategy, right? And if you're praying because you don't know, maybe we can figure out whether or not this is the right place. Go ahead.
Rob, I'm driving, so I'm going to shut my camera off so I could put the
Okay.
phone down. But I just wanted to throw out there, I think a lot of times the biggest challenge, which goes right back to what Glenn was saying, is us. You know, back in the day when I took Sweat Hogs, he used to talk about a guts gauge you got to have some guts to say, let's pray together, or let's do it right now. And I think sometimes we just don't have the guts. And because that's drawing a line in the sand and say, well, I feel what you feel. Let's do it. Let's hit it head on. And you got to realize that if you don't do it, a salesperson's going to do it. They're going to come in to a scenario and they're going to say, hey, let's pray together. You got to have your guts to have the conviction and to go forward and do it. And I think sometimes we're our own worst enemy when it comes to that.
Right. Hey, Rob, thanks for sharing that.
Can I say
yeah,
something also?
absolutely.
All right, so when someone tell me, I said, you really have to live somewhere. You can rent and you don't gain anything, and you have a chance to gain. If you look, and everything went up, do you think that the home are going to go down suddenly? I mean, even the cost of material is even half double. That means the home that you have are not going to actually, like everybody say, gonna go down. And when actually you have to live somewhere, you rent, you gain nothing, or you own and you will gain something.
And I think also, Karma, it's important to identify that, you know, if you're buying a house, most of the people buying a house probably have a 5 to 15 year time span, right? Like they're doing it for not just to live there for a year. So, focusing on the bigger picture, right? Hey, Karma, if at some point, if you had a gut feeling or an expert told you prices were going to go down and you're 7 months into you're 7 years into your 15 years of ownership, are you going to sell your house and then try to buy it back a year later? And the answer is ridiculously no, right? So maybe getting them to understand that whole piece, and maybe it's even that we haven't convinced them on home ownership, right? Because if we think that we're selling homes instead of home ownership, it's a little bit different, right? And I was talking, with Glenn about, the concept of building a team, and you have to have synergy, right? You need to have, you need to have people that understand what the process is and that truly do, they're educated, they want to buy, and they're consistent with our values. If you bring people onto your team that aren't consistent with your value, for any of us, that will take you steps backwards, if not, months and years backwards in your business plan. And for people buying a house, I truly believe most of them, it's a really excellent idea. It's good financially. It's good from lifestyle. I think that, home buyers, will do more for their kids, their family, and sometimes their pets. That they're, oh, I want to have a dog. I want to have a beautiful backyard for my dog to run in. I want to have a great school district for my children to thrive. Right. And is it worth trying to speculate whether prices are going up or down in the next 6 months to risk that? Right. And you ask the question instead of trying to convince them. I think it has a lot more impact. And we all have ways, Karma, that we understand it, right? Hey, the 2x4s and the shingles and the windows, they all cost twice what they did from 2019. So, there's really, absent a short-term crisis, there's no way that prices for homes are going to go down unless you think everybody's going to go live on the street, right? And I'm not saying that arrogantly, but I mean, it's just simple math, right? And in terms of hiring us, right? Why would people not hire us to sell their house? If they're hiring somebody at a lower price, then they don't see the value, right? Because there's a tremendous value in the craft that we do. And, if they hire the cheapest person, okay, they don't see the value in the service that we provide. And most people that don't hire competent professionals are doing that because nobody's taken the time to explain to them how it works. And there's some segment of that, whether it's 1% or 8% or 10%, that no matter what we say, they're going to go for the cheapest alternative because they buy on Temu, they buy the cheapest thing from China instead of buying something quality that will be a good value. Okay. But we need to be able to ask the right questions so that we can understand what's happening, because if somebody wants the cheapest product, they don't care about the value, then, you know, why are we wasting our time? And that's accomplished by asking questions. And another thing that, you know, I kind of picked up from watching these lenders on a national level is what they're concerned about is Rocket Mortgage, right? Because what Rocket just did is they bought a servicing company, and that servicing company will handle all the refis from the lenders that abandon their clients, right? So they're concerned about that. Okay, and we should be equally concerned about Zillow, and not necessarily Zillow itself, but the concept of a product that's available to our clients that makes it easy for them to find somebody else. And the only way Zillow is a threat is if we don't keep in touch with our clients. Does that make any sense to anybody? I mean, Zillow would like us to be, Zillow would love to automate the entire process and have us all to be a W-2 employee of Zillow. Does anybody disagree with that statement? So anybody that wants to challenge me on that and say Zillow loves to just sell us leads or take a referral fee?
The only thing I would say, Rob, is that the majority of Zillow's revenue does come from agents. So I think they have a vested interest in, you know, providing products and services that agents will buy.
I believe pretty pretty high resolution that and conviction that Zillow would love to have everybody working for Zillow getting paid an hourly wage and, you know, make more money off the deal. I just think that's the way that they're programmed. You know, I think their founder, I think he started Expedia, right? So he put the travel agents out of business, and he would love to put us out of business, make us W-2 employees. That's my opinion. I'm not saying I'm right. And I'm also not saying that, hey, you know, the person that wants to eliminate my job, I'm going to avoid them, because, you know, there's a balance, right? Because the public is going to that resource. And, you know, Rocket, you know, a lot of these people who are trying to quote unquote rocket proof their business. Any lenders on the call?
Frank's on.
Frank, are you on? If you're on and where you can speak, just you chime in here. But, you know, Rocket is kind of a like the Zillow of the mortgage business. It's like the 800-pound gorilla. And I believe that Rocket wants to own your client, right? And I believe Rocket, when they pay to buy the servicing of a loan, they're like, you know what, Beth, you sold them the house. Now I paid you. Now that's my client, right? And
And
Zillow
they have a
thinks
real
that-
estate division too.
Well,
yeah,
they're buying
bought-
Redfin.
right. So the only way that we truly win is by the relationship game, by having personal relationships and not abandoning clients, right? That's how we future-proof our business, because you know, these call centers, right, they can't replicate us, right? I mean, they're right for some people. Some people don't want the value. They think they know it all. And that's fine. If you want to go to an 800 number to get your mortgage, yeah, you might get a cheaper price. You might not close on time. You might not get the offer accepted. You might have the wrong product, but you got a good deal on it, right? I'm proud of you. And the same thing about buying a house. You know, if you think that you can do it yourself, then part of that is shame on us, because we haven't been able to engage and identify the value that we put into the chain, right? How do we add value to the process? And we want to take something that's rather complex and make it simple for the consumer. You know, if you want to buy a house, you know, we can't necessarily get you a discount because I'm a successful agent, but maybe we can get you a strategy to buy it at like a very probable fair price to get that house accepted. And when you're uneducated or when you're uncertain, you make bad decisions, right? You're uncertain, you're not making a competitive offer, right? Maybe you're not surrounding yourself with the most competent people. Is Frank, are you on? Maybe he's rocket proofing his business right now, but you know, is anybody like particularly afraid of Zillow, or what are your thoughts on like a big gorilla like Zillow in our business?
No, you just got to do your job there. You have a job to do, and you got to do it the best way you can. Like another successful realtor I was talking the other day, 30 years of the business, he said, at 8 o'clock, I am there making the calls. I said, wow, that is a great agent that every day he does his job. And then the other thing with the buyers and sellers, it's all about asking questions, see what it is that they're looking for, you know, and see how you can help them, that you can help them the best way you can, you know, to reach their wants and needs. And when it comes to now the prices, I was just looking up because I have a research here since 2008, and I went back to look at 10 years ago. The average price here in Broward County, it was $375,000. Now, May of 2025, it's at 913. So it tripled. The median price, it was a 293,000 in 2015. Now it's 630. So it doubled. They doubled. So, and that's why all these people that they get rich and richer, they have the commodity to put their hands on, you know, and the gold, the silver, and real estate. And that's why real estate has made more millionaire than any other field for that reason. It keeps up with inflation.
It's a hedge against inflation. You know, and you know, Tony, maybe a less educated person might say, "Ooh, wow, that doubled in 10 years or tripled in 10 years. Maybe I ought to wait for it to come back down," right? But I think that's an uneducated individual. And I'm not going to guarantee that prices are going to continue to go up. But I know if, you know, during history, home prices have gone up 5.5% on average per year, and you expect to be in that house 10 to 15 years. If it goes down in 6 months, or if it goes down in 7 years, in 6 months, by the end of 15 years, you, Tony, are going to be a lot wealthier than you are right now. And you will be glad that you bought a house. And the only people that I can honestly say throughout my career that regretted buying houses were speculators who tried to time the market. And to be honest with you, you know, Tony, it sounds like, you know, you're avoiding getting in the market for exactly the reason that penalized them, right? Because they had to be out of the market in 6 months. You're going to be in for 15 years.
Oh, that's for sure. Yeah, that's for sure, David, because, you know, you're not a flipper. You know, flippers, they look things differently, but you're going to live in your house, in this house here. There's going to be a roof on your head. You're going to enjoy it. And the other thing, the other indicator that the price will keep going up is that since 1998 to now, the dollar has been devaluated by 75%. That has been devaluated. So it's a good thing to buy anytime. That is a good thing. Plus now we have almost, we have over a year of supply in condos here in Florida, in Broward County anyway. That's what I keep up with the numbers. And we almost have 6 months worth of supply of houses that we have. So we went from when there was no inventory down to 2,000 homes. Now we have almost 6,000 that we have. So I tell the people when they look at me, I say, this is a great time for you to buy, because first of all, you know, the sellers are motivated to sell. And second of all, you will have a choice. I said, do you imagine that when there was no inventory, whatever you looked at, that's what you have to buy, and then put up with 10, 20, 30 offers? I said, is that what you want to be in? Yeah, and like I said before, I made my daughter buy. I said, now it's time for you to buy. Oh, the interest rate, they're high. It's okay, it's all right. As long as you can afford it, it's okay. Yeah, when the interest rate come down, you refinance it. That's all. So
Yeah, and Tony, if I could just, number one is your passion is highly believable, right? It genuinely is, like the way you talk about you had your daughter buy, right? But I would make one suggestion, which is ask a few more questions. Find a way to, like when interest rates come down, you refinance, right? Instead of doing that, maybe, you can try using this, say, hey, Tony, let me ask you, if interest rates went down, would that be a good or a bad thing after you bought a house? And let them answer, right? And when they think about it, they'll be like, well, I'd probably just refinance, right? And do you think that the times now are a little bit uncertain with everything geopolitically going on, right? You have nuclear countries, Pakistan and India, pointing nukes at each other, right? And you have tariff wars, right? Trade wars. So is it possible, Tony, that interest rates could go up in a year or two from now? Is
well,
it
for
possible?
sure, nobody knows, but it's possible.
Right. So Tony, if you bought now at 6 3/4 and rates went up to 10, how would you feel?
I'll feel good about it.
And if you bought now at 6 3/4 and rates went down to 5 1/8, what would you do?
Refinance it and have a lower monthly payment.
Right. And if rates went down to 5 1/8, what do you think would happen to prices?
Certainly they'll be going up and they would have a lot more offers on a property.
Right. So basically, I outlined, three possibilities, right?
Sure.
I guess the third is if you buy and rates stay the same, you know exactly what you have. If rates go up, you refinance, right? And if rates go down, if rates go up, you have a good rate, and if rates go down, you're refinancing. So I think I'm transferring by getting you to say in your own words that all three scenarios are pretty good.
Oh, yes, but the other thing is that all this, things that the media puts out there about these tariffs and all this crap going up, who cares? People have to live. People need to have a roof on their head. If it's the end of the world, nobody has anything anyway, so who cares? You got to keep living. You got to keep going,
I mean, if the cost of a good education goes up by 10%, Tony, are you not going to put your kids in college? Of course you will, right? You'll figure out how to do that. So,
Sure.
so we need to make the right decisions, and I just want to make sure I give you the information to make the right choice.
Exactly.
What are some other objections that you're finding?
Well, certainly now, especially on listing part there that we are, and like you just said about these other Zillow and all that, you gotta be good on showing your value, on demonstrating your value to the consumer. Because if they think that you got value, there's value, they'll buy it. If they don't think there's value in it, they certainly bypass that. So we have to get better and better every day how to explain that, how to show that. And because other people in the past, they have tried, like Zillow now in the past, they had other companies and like a buy owner, and all that. They all went sideways because this is a people business. And people want to know, what do you think? What do you feel? How you like it? I want to buy this house. What do you say? And it's not just an object that you get with Amazon that you get. So it's more, into it that you got to get more into it. And people feelings, they have to feel right, and they'll go forward with it. That they'll go.
Yep. So do you think if we were able to educate consumers a lot more, that they would be more likely to work with us or less likely?
Oh no, the more you educate them, the more they will work with you. They say, wow, this guy is knowledgeable, this guy can really help me, that it can really help me. And they go, I sold the same house 2-3 times, even though the buyer was not my buyer, I sold the same house. Because they always say, I like the way you handle the business. I said, really? It was not even my client, it was somebody else's client. And they say, I like the way you handle that. I like that. And I said, oh, good. I'll keep doing it. As long as you are happy, that's all that matters,
Okay, and what do you think some of the biggest mistakes that clients do when they're selling a house? Or what do you think some of the biggest misconceptions are?
I don't know what you mean.
It's worth more than the market because they're so emotionally involved with their own home.
Oh,
They don't let go of the fact that it doesn't belong to them anymore when they put it on the market. We're trying to find the buyer that's going to want to be in that home, and they don't have the emotional tie yet.
Or
And
I put $20,000 into a new roof. It's worth $20,000 more.
Oh my God, that's always happening. Or new carpet. We'll just give a carpet allowance. I know this carpet's bad. We'll give a carpet allowance.
Or the closet showers are the best. When they walk me through and show me every closet in the house, and I say, if it doesn't have a chandelier, I don't care.
or gold bars that you're leaving.
Or the garage, right? Like if I say, if it doesn't have a checkerboard floor and a race car in there, I'm not taking pictures of it, right? But everyone thinks that these things are of value.
Oh,
I think
that's hot. I love that one.
A lot of people have recently invested money into homes they planned on staying in longer. And now that things have changed and they want to move closer to family, they're realizing they over improved because they're selling within a year or two, and getting them, priced correctly from day one is so important. I'm seeing also a lot of sellers offering less commission and a lot of agents just giving in and not fighting. But the last 3 sales I've had to ask for the extra point. I've gotten them all. I think it's so important that we practice on, negotiating and standing up for ourselves and our value when representing a buyer as well.
Very, very well said. If you don't believe in your value, nobody will, right? And one of the biggest mistakes that I think that if you ask the right questions, sellers will recognize is that your days on market, are so correlated to your sales price, right? And if you have a seller that's saying, hey, Beth, can we just try it at 7.25 and then we'll lower it to 6.75 in 30 days? Have you ever heard of, or have you ever had a seller ask you that question, Beth?
All the time.
And could I ask you, how do you answer that?
Well, if we do that and it's priced too high, which the suggestion you're making is showing us that it's priced too high for the market, then it's going to get stale dated. The first 2 weeks are the most important weeks of a listing.
Yeah, but I'm not in a hurry to sell, Beth. I can wait for the right buyer.
Well, you will get less statistically. Your first offer is always your best. And if you wait 6 months, people are going to wonder what's wrong with the house.
So,
and if it's priced too high, you're not going to get enough showings.
I tend to turn it around, Rob, on them. So I'll say, when you see a house that's on the market for a month, what do you think?
Perfect.
And I always like to turn the question back around because you know that what they're thinking. You just want to get them to say it and rationalize it out on their own so they own it.
That's right. I agree.
So yeah, it's a great observation, Glenn. I think that goes towards one of my principles, which is, clients don't argue with their own words. Right. And sometimes it's like an aha moment that's so obvious to everybody except for them. Right. So if we're on Beth, if we're on the market, like Glenn said, for 2 weeks, and then we cut the price by 25,000, let's say somebody brings up a buyer that loves the house. How are they going to talk about negotiating? And I've seen every seller that I've ever been on say, well, they're probably going to think that they have the upper hand because we just cut the price.
Right.
I'm like, oh, that's interesting. you know, and then you kind of take them back to, you know, where it is and maybe even show them, hey, in your local market, you know, days on market, you know, it can cost as much as 15% of the purchase price if you get it wrong. And you show them numbers, and it's just, it's amazing how sometimes we discount the intellect of our clients if we can present it in a different light. Right?
Right.
And then, you know, Glenn, what's the acceptance rate when you flip it around in terms of getting them to price it more reasonably, in your opinion?
I'm one of the rare ones that will walk away. So I'd say 100%, or I just walk away.
And out of 100, how many of them do you walk away from?
I think I've done 2. One was a Cowboys fan, so I told him I couldn't sell his house because he was a Cowboys fan. But otherwise, the other one was price. They wanted more, and I wasn't going to do it. 2 in all my years of real estate, I should say.
Yeah, I commend you for that. But I mean, most people are just like, oh, maybe, Glenn, maybe I'll just lie to them and then I'll just get them to lower the price because I'll take a 1-year listing. And like, I think if you're doing that, that's really, I'm going to be bold and say that's lack of integrity.
Yep.
Right? Because you're putting your eventual commission. And the ironic part about it is that's costing you money too, because that you're going to get calls from that person, right? And you're like, oh, I'm glad I don't want to answer this call. It's John calling again, right?
Yep.
He's upset.
Yeah, I ask myself with buyers and with sellers, am I going to look at my phone and not want to talk to them? And if the answer is yes, in either scenario, I'll hand them to somebody else or just walk away, because I know it's just going to bring pure misery. And every time I've done it, I regretted it 100%.
Bobby, you're a Cowboys fan, huh?
Yes, I've always been a big advocate and a fan of Chief Baker up until about 30 seconds.
It was honestly my way out of the listing because I didn't want it. I didn't like the person, but I just saw the sign, and I'm not a Cowboys fan or a Giants fan. So,
but I think if we are able to educate and yeah, I don't know. There used to be a saying, I think it was like a clothing retailer, the educated consumer is our best customer. Has anybody ever heard that one from decades ago?
Oh, yes.
Right, the educated consumer is our best customer.
Sims Clothing Store, that's where it was from.
Where was it, Bobby?
Sims,
okay.
Sims, yeah, you're right.
Okay, so you know, I think the educated consumer is our best customer, right? Because they're going to ask us the right questions and we'll have the answers and we'll answer it with integrity. And, you know, it is, and I don't know that this is a conversation that you physically have with a customer or a seller. But, you know, if you have no business, who is more likely to, you know, take a long shot and exaggerate the truth to you to try to get a piece of business? Somebody that's successful and you know, productive in providing results to their clients, or somebody who is perhaps desperate and needs the sale to pay their mortgage? You know, I don't see that this goes to a conversation, but I think that I know that the people that are desperate, that aren't willing to do the work, are willing to say anything and try to take a shortcut, which really doesn't usually work out, because a lot of times those don't sell and those clients are upset because you weren't honest with them. But you just have to know that, you know, if you're able to communicate, educate, you know, a homeowner and a buyer on what it takes to be successful doing the business, I believe you'll have those clients that you do want to answer the phone with, because they're calling you with a referral, not with a complaint, right? You know, these are my Alan Kazins, who every time the guy called me was sending me a mortgage client when I was in the lending business. And these are the people that I'm sure we all have people that we know are going to be telling everybody that they come into contact with what a great job Tony did. Those are the people that we want.
The other thing is that, Robert, is that maybe you can highlight, for example, by weekly numbers. This week, 1,025 new listing came on the market in Broward County. And there were 1,388 price reduction. So I tell the people, if the market was jumping up, these people here, they would not be reducing the price. If the homes were selling, they would not be reducing the price. So it is very important that we start with the right price, so that way your home gets sold. I don't know what else you want to add to that.
Oh, and I think that's part of the education, right, Tony? Like, if we decide to work together, do you think it's in your best interest to be one of these 1,368? Or do you want to be part of these 412 that sold in 30 days or less? And if you want to be part of this club, what do we need to do to be there? Right? That's my opinion. I think I saw a question about, what do you do if you got the pricing wrong after 2 weeks? Right? And sometimes pricing is not as transparent, and sometimes there's some subjectivity to it where we might get it wrong. And I think everybody's probably got pricing wrong at some point in time, right? Even you, Tony, you've probably mispriced.
Oh yeah, sure. Oh, for sure. Yeah, sometimes there when I'm not familiar that much with the area, and then like somebody said before, they put a new roof on, they put a new carpet down, and they think it's worth so much more. So if I see they are so animated about it, but I know there is motivation there. I'll tell them, listen, I'll let you try for 2 weeks here. If we don't get no results, then we'll talk about it at what price we should really be.
Like what I would probably do is check this concept out. I'd probably be honest and say, you know what, Tony, I thought that, having the corner lot would make the property a lot more attractive. I really apologize. The market's spoken. We haven't gotten any positive feedback. I think we need to readjust the price. That's how I would like.
Sure. Yeah. When you go back with the reduction,
we all make mistakes, right?
Oh yes. Oh yeah. That, or the seller is so animated. Some people, they get such an ego-driven character there that they want to try. I said, all right, let's do it. Let's get it. As long as we understand where we are. Don't take it on me if nothing happens. As I tell them.
Right, but I think, Tony, maybe you can leave with an extra tool here, which is asking another level of questions, saying, look, if we try and then we have to cut the price, how are people going to make offers on it? And let them answer that question instead of going in it and leading them to believe that, hey, despite my hardest work, I believe I could sell your house for that. I don't know. I think I would be more abundance mindset, so I wouldn't be doing that. Or I'd say, hey, I just want you to know, like, I think we're gonna get limited showings that could cost you money, and I'd probably calculate how much money it could cost them. I want to see if I see Tony's on camera, my home buyer seminar man. Are you able to unmute yourself there?
Yes, I'm unmuted. Go ahead.
So has there been any positive action since our meeting, or did everybody go away and forget about us?
No, it's been positive. I think they've at least started the transition into trying to get their credit together, and all of them has tried to contact either Frank or another lender to see where they're at and where they're going from there. And I think one of the things, I mean, based on what we were just talking about, I look at everything inside the house, or mostly everything inside the house, is creature comforts. I mean, and I think explaining the numbers to them off the bat helps with transitioning into what's creature comfort and what is actual value to the person buying. So I go with, that's what we want as creatures, is this brand, but that's not what sells. And then the numbers, I always go with what the house next door sold and around in the last 6 months, and I give them that. I don't mess around with what they think when it comes to what they believe the price is. I show them this is what these houses around you sold for. So at the end of the day, you're not gonna get no more than what they see.
So I want to ask you just a question for the people who haven't done what you did, or they can kind of get some insight to it.
Okay.
For me, when we talked about doing a home buyer event, right? I thought that you were going to find a bunch of people that were ready to buy a house, and then they were going to come there for an education. But what I realized from your event is you probably just called people, said, "Hey, I want you to show up," and they did.
Right.
And I don't think, maybe except for the one gentleman in the front that had bought an investment property or two, I don't think anybody else really had plans of buying a house until you called them. Would that be fair?
That'd be fair. Yep.
And to the extent some of the people didn't even think about, like, they were borrowing money for cars and doing other things that weren't taking them where they wanted to be. Like, homeownership was just not on their radar.
Right.
And I think when they left, it definitely was front and center, right?
Yep.
And to me, that was really rewarding. And I think another gift was that we only had like 7 people that showed up out of 20, but it really made it a very intimate experience where everybody, I think every single person stayed afterwards, right? And was talking to one of us.
Right.
So I really believe that you manufactured homeowners from that event, and I commend you for that, right?
Yep.
It wasn't like going on Zillow where people who are looking to buy a house and you're trying to, convince them to work with you. You created demand, and you're changing lives if they buy. I think at least one of those 6 or 7 people would have never bought a house, and now they know it's on their radar, and that's just amazing to me. Like, instead of a home buyer seminar, it should be a home ownership seminar, because you have to sell them on the benefits of home ownership before you find a home, right?
Right.
And it was fun and rewarding too. I just want to say that. Go ahead.
And I think the thing that's why I looked at your when I when I saw your presentation, if someone has never bought before, has never seen that before, that is going to change their mind. Period. The way you presented it and how you organize it from the start to the end, that helped them realize how much they're hustling backwards versus forward.
Yeah. And it was a great event. So anybody who has any thoughts about helping people in your tribe, people that people in your church, your community organization, and it may have been awkward for you to call them up and say, "Hey, I want you to come to this event." It may not have been, but I think everybody was glad they came.
Right.
And I think, honestly, more so than, even if somebody's in Celebration, Florida, they walk in the door of the real estate office, they probably have an intent to buy. And whether they buy with one of our agents or somebody else, I think a lot of those people are predisposed to buy. I think what you did is you showed people what's possible and educated them on, the merits of home ownership, not a house. And we really didn't even go that much into the process of how to find the right house. We went into the merits of getting into the home ownership process, right? Because if you're not sold on home ownership, you're not going to buy a house, right? If we start showing you houses before you're bought into home ownership, that's a mismatch.
Yeah.
So anyway, if anybody has any desires to do that, reach out to me, your manager. The material is very well thought out and curated. And if you were to give me your gut, Tony, how many were there? 5 people there, right at the end?
Yep, that was 5. Yeah.
How many do you think are going to wind up buying a house in the next 2 years?
I'm gonna say 4 out of the 5.
4 out of the 5.
Yep.
And with 100% transparency, if they didn't go to that event or you didn't call them, how many would still be renting in 2 years? All of them, right?
All of them. Yeah.
All right. Well, I genuinely enjoyed it. I don't know if it showed that I enjoyed it, but I'm glad that you invited me to do that. And you're going to be doing another one, right?
Yeah, doing it Saturday morning. Yeah, this is gonna be interesting.
You're doing it next week?
No, the first Saturday in June.
All right. Well, let us know how it goes, and anybody else that wants to, help create homeowners and help them build wealth, reach out to me or give Tony a call. you know, he'll update you on how that went. Paul, you had a question? Thank you, Tony.
I just want to add on a lot of what was spoken today and what Bob Durso was talking about as well earlier, and just listening to everything's valuable on these calls, but the most important thing coming out of this is our realtor mindset, and I can talk from, you know, personal experience that my worst years were because of my own mindset. And I just want people on this call to, you know, I've been in the business, got my license in 2004. I did mortgages before that for about 7 years. And I don't know everything, but, you know, from coaching and all that, most agents, we operate with a kind of like an employee mindset in an entrepreneur game, you know, like we wait for leads, we wait for the market to change, we wait for a sign, all of that. And we got to get our mentality and our mental shift out of that. We got to go from transactional to relational, from being a realtor to being
and Paul, you even overlooked the fact that you built a rather significant RE/MAX branch. You mentored a lot of people that to this day are incredibly successful, and they came through you and your team. And you know, if you stayed on that game where you develop those people, and to all of us can control our mindset, the world would be really different.
Yeah, and that's the one thing that I work hard at every day when I wake up in the morning. That's the one thing I that my mindset needs to be in the right way for me to come in, for me to help myself, help my clients, help my team. So if I'm not in the right mindset and I'm going to give out the wrong message to my team is going to have the same disease that I do. We need to, that, you know, today, a lot of points were spoken in today's call, a lot of positive things. Then you hear a lot of things from Florida that the market is slowing down. You know, I've been in a slow market, and it's all about the mindset. And the gentleman who's mentioned all the numbers down there, I should remember his name. He was just talking.
Tony Bureau.
Tony's got the right mindset, you know, and he's in Florida in a down market, right? It's all about mindset. You know, that's I can go on and talk about this, and you know,
So Paul, we're not fair weathered agents, right? And if we don't shift it when the market shifts, then what's our true value, right? We don't have a true value. If your business is going up and down with the market, and in my opinion, that you need to reevaluate what your process is, because the only thing that should be limiting us is, you know, the amount of time and you know, I think we should be getting more efficient and doing more regardless of the market, right? I mean, the market goes up, the market goes down.
Most agents goes down. Are emotional, you know. Most agents are emotional, you know, and they need to be tactical, you know. They need to, like you're saying, they need to make market shifts. They need to, you know, kind of ghost their clients. Don't panic and pivot, you know. Those are the things that we need to do.
They need to be disciplined. They're like you need, you know, you can't become a peak health, you know, in great condition without going to the gym and paying your dues, right? So if you want to be successful, you have to do the process, and it's really simple. Most of us know what we need to do. If you want to get healthier, you gotta, you know, eat better and go to the gym. If you want to be successful in real estate, you need to time block, and you need to make calls. You need to figure out where your new business is coming from. When the new business presents itself, you need to have the right process and communication to be successful, right? And it's kind of simple, but it's not easy, right? Simple, but not easy. That's how we'll end it.
Yeah. Rob, I just want to say to something Paul said. My coach said to me something this week when I was talking about listing presentations, and Paul, you are spot on about mindset. We were talking about listing presentation. He said, if you go to the listing tomorrow that you went to one today with the same presentation, that's arrogance, not confidence. And I thought to myself, wow, like how important is that we just don't go there and do the same thing we did yesterday, because it's not going to work, right? And this market's changing. It impacted me. I was like, boy, I've had the same listing presentation for like 4 years. What a schmuck I am.
Mhm. So when somebody asks, who's your coach?
So my coach is a guy named Justin, and he's with the Inner Circle at Spring Bees team.
So it's like a Sisu type of affiliated arrangement, right?
They're related to them, yes.
So anyway, thank you, everybody. Have a productive weekend, and I hope this helped you just a tiny bit. Thanks.
Thanks, Rob.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.